How do you define a good day? For me, if I don't start peeing before my pants are down, that's a good day. If I'm even thinking about peeing, it's already too late. I always assume I have to pee, and I'm always right. My brand of adult pads is called Free to Pee, You and Me. Laugh as hard as you want, ladies. On the rag, once again. On the road to total incontinence. 8 years ago, when I turned 69, I finally realized I'll no longer die young. One thing to cross off my anxiety list. I grew up on another idea of 69. All I could say is, you could choke. Too much going on. I never really liked it. A friend posted a photo, sent me a link. I click on it, and I'm not in it. Then I see a woman wearing the same clothing I had been wearing. A holy fucking shit moment. A few days later, when I see my nephew, I ask him, when you look at me, do you see someone you recognize? Yes, he replies, looking at me blankly. Later, he emails to say that often he doesn't understand where I'm coming from. Wait 30 years, he will. I gave myself a big surprise party for my 75th. If you don't think turning 75 isn't one big fucking surprise, just wait. Here I am, closer to dead than to alive, wondering where will be my last place on earth and what will take me out, knowing that one day the last thing I say will be the last thing I said, and vice versa. We all come from a family, and as we know, the family is the scene of the crime. To say dysfunctional family is redundant. Home is where the horror is. I was definitely homophobic. As children, we're bedwetters, my brother and I. We make the trek from our bedroom to the washing machine, carrying our soaked sheets. Common wisdom today is there may be an emotional component. Fear and insecurity may trigger it. We grow up with the knowledge that our maternal grandmother has been, and I quote, buried alive by the Nazis, a killed grandmother. Her absence is a gaping presence in our lives, and the horror of how she has died is so great that I never imagine more of her life than just that moment, and some part of me goes into deep freeze at a very young age. My mother arrives by boat in 1940, getting out of Italy 4 days before all traffic was banned for Jews. Originally from Latvia, she was in medical school in Bologna at the time. On her medical diploma, it states that she is of the Jewish race to the finish. At the port in New York, she's met by her cousin Eva, who takes one look at her and gives her 2 tips for succeeding in America. Get rid of that mustache and lose weight. Having seen photos of my mom from that time, I can tell you, she was not the bearded lady, nor was she fat. She was what one would call zaftig, meaning filled out, pleasantly plump. Thus began her dieting, and I'm sure you know what follows. The joke in the house was, Mommy is going on a diet last week. She projected her weighty obsession onto me, and my body became her domain from a very young age. By 10, I was being put on diets and weighed every Sunday. If I didn't lose weight, I didn't get my allowance. No worry, I did so much better by stealing. An allowance was hardly an incentive. My father's mother, Rosie, came to this country in the early 1900s, alone, age 15, from Odessa, to escape the pogroms. A boat person, steerage, illiterate. She went to work in a factory to make and save money to bring over her mother. Meets my grandfather Joseph from Lithuania, on this side of the world. He is a tailor. He can read and write. Their wedding photograph was the only proof I had that they too had once been young. Grandpa was handsome, and there were stories of his affairs and how Rosie had once attacked him with a knife. If looks could kill, he would have been mortally wounded daily. Her hostility towards him was palpable. She would never forgive him and her lack of luck in this world. My father said that with Rosie's bad luck, she would go to the Grand Canyon and it would be closed. So when I complained about anything, my mom would call me Rosie. Oh no, anyone but that. Rosie never opened her presents. She'd take them, put them on the couch, and then ignore them. I used to wonder if she opened them after we left, or if we could have wrapped empty boxes and cut our losses. My father had been scouted for the New York Yankees when he was at City College. My grandmother said she had not come to this country so that her son would wave a stick. When my father's younger sister brought home a conductor she was in love with, my grandmother fainted. Once again, someone waving a stick was not her idea of the American dream. By the way, Rosie never did get to bring over her mother, who was killed in a pogrom. At 9, I'm riveted by stories about the Warsaw Ghetto. I learn about men walking through the sewers to get to the city to work, to return with food and medicine. At the time, my mother, who is a doctor, works from home. I steal medicine from her cabinet and sneak it into the bathroom and flush it down the toilet to the men at the end of the flush. I steal food from the kitchen too and intend to flush that. I'm successful with flushing the medicine. The food I mostly eat. We grow up in a family where no one talks about dying. It's getting killed for being Jewish that gets our attention. We wet our beds. Wouldn't you wet the bed if someone told you those stories? Those stories could scare the shit out of you, so wetting the bed isn't that bad. I mean, we could have been bed shitters. The 3 badges I could have earned most easily as a Girl Scout were stealing, overeating, and lying. I lie whenever I can. It seems like a safer idea than the truth. The truth is, we are Jewish, and in 1949, once you leave Washington Heights, you are venturing into new territory. Riverdale, the word is out. More Jews are moving in. I'm glad my last name is Gillis. It can pass. Welcome to the highlights of my low points. When I was 11 years old, I formed a stamp club. I was the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. What more can I tell you about myself that could possibly be more revealing? It's no surprise I am now organizing the Control Freak Olympics, where control freaks can speak openly and honestly about how hard it is to get other people to do what you want. Our handbook will be My Way, the Right Way. A guide to unfulfillment. I have an opinion about every fucking thing, including the way my partner told stories about his own life. I tell them better, of course. I used to think that what I said was what I meant. I started keeping a journal which I call What I Did Not Say Today. Since I no longer say these things, except sometimes, I hear the tone of voice I'm not saying it in, and it scares me. Now I sit in toxic silence, not saying shit, but thinking it. There are innies and there are outies, those who freak in and those who freak out, the overreactors and the overwithholders. It is so much easier to identify me as a nutcase. Listen to me, watch my behavior. Some people will never get over having known me at my worst. Oh, the damage done. The other person dreads seeing me. I dread seeing that person's dread of me. Dreadlocked. What a relief it is to meet new people who have no history with me. nothing to forgive me for, or not forgive me. I never fell in love. I called it being clitorized. I meet Brad when I'm 20, and we immediately fall in with each other. We travel, live together, and marry when I am 22. It is interesting and fun from the very beginning. We are right for each other. Brad keeps me eternally hip. His eclectic tastes in all things fills our lives with great adventure. He takes me into America, and we travel all over the world. He's a sculptor. He carves stone. That's an important factor as to why our marriage lasts. No one who carves stone is in it for the quick fix and has to deeply believe that things will be revealed over time. Let's rewrite the marriage vows. Enter two innocents. Do you, dear clueless person, take this equally dear clueless person and promise to stay for life, no matter how unfulfilling it may become? Take the F out of life, place it in fuck where it belongs. And what does that leave you with? Lie. Do you promise to stop drinking? I do. Promise to stay on your diet? I do. Promise to love me forever? I do. I promise. Promiscuity. Promising over and over again what it is impossible to promise. Do promises that we make before we know ourselves count, or before we understand the power of addiction? Can we promise to never see things differently and never change? Is there really anything at all we can promise? One can rarely tell if a relationship will work long or short term. What one learns soon is that it will be difficult. That's how they are. There's a mutual moment of going for it, and everyone and everything vanishes for at least 6 months, a suspension of reason. All those quirks which eventually we will dislike intensely in the other person are also adorable, so cute, such a turn on. Why is early passion so conducive to strange behavior, such as a tongue in your ear? What did you say? I can't hear you. I've got a tongue in my ear. Shaking off those last drops from his penis in the bathroom with his hand on the wall is fabulously erotic, because after all, it is his penis, and soon it will enter your orifices. Months later, you will begin to notice the drops of urine on the bathroom floor and the smudges from his hand on the wall, and it will make you fucking nuts. Sign of a major shift in the relationship. Tongue in ear? I don't think so. Tongue in cheek is more like it. Our choice of partner is no mistake. If you feel you have met your soulmate, run. You are now ready for the family reenactment. One morning, I woke up in a bad attitude. I told Brad I'd had a terrible nightmare. Do you remember it? He asked. Why would I want to remember it? I responded, not nicely. Lighten up, he suggested. Fuck you, I said. It's not even 9:30 in the morning. I was always emotionally available. The problem was, which emotions? I have a new game called Couples. Put me into a room with random people, give me a few minutes, and I will tell you who the couples are. The only two people who will have totally different memories of something, constantly contradict each other, and look on in disdain as everyone else is laughing at their partner's joke. They must be a couple. The only reason relationships work is because both people will it to work. When I'm 22, a doctor friend of the family puts me on amphetamines so I can lose weight. I was used to surfing on sugar highs daily, but I tell you, on this new drug, I was flying high and fucking nuts for the 8 months it took me to let go of 100 pounds. One size fits all? Not in my world. I have shed 100 pounds more than once. After the first time, the doctor takes me off amphetamines and says, now just eat normally. What did I ever know about normal? I was a high-functioning crazy person. I was the only one I knew who could eat on cocaine. Overeating stops working. I enter menopause in full-blown hormonal havoc. I'm in free fall. I see through to the other side of not being able to hold it all together. I could no longer pretend to myself or anyone else that it was okay. That first glimpse of objectivity, and I am blessed with the gift of desperation. I started going to a 12-step program that helps those who have an eating disorder. What an immense relief, not feeling like the only sick fuck in the room. All to explain, I don't eat dessert. I am a dessert voyeur. I always plan for and serve dessert. I like to cut it, smell it, feel the density, and watch others' approaches to how they eat it. Fast, slowly. Do they put down the fork between bites? Do they lick the fork? Do they leave any over? Once in a club, I watched someone pick at his chocolate cake all evening. The waiter comes and starts to take away his plate. There was a leftover morsel. I blurt out, "He hasn't finished." As is often the case, I switch addictions away from a massive eating disorder into collecting with a pathological determination. I used to say I had one of everything, and then I realized that what I was doing all along was stocking my bomb shelter. Get under your desk and cover your eyes and kiss your ass goodbye. One night in 1998, as Brad and I are walking down the stairs at Asia Society in New York, he has a heart attack and dies. I am more present at the moment of his death than I'd ever been when he was alive. His death gets my full attention the way nothing else ever has. He is 58 years old. I am 54. We have been together for 34 years. Death has a life of its own. I enter the realm of the undead. The pull between wherever he went and where life goes on is where I dwell. It's a good thing that breathing is an automatic reflex because I do not have the energy to commit to such an exhausting exercise. As the hypochondriac I've become, I had been so busy rehearsing my own death that it never occurred to me that he might die first. I was dying all the time. Hypochondriacs actually get it right. There is something wrong, just not what we thought. When Brad dies, I finally give up my death as a New Year's resolution. I become the least neurotic I have ever been, the most clear, even though nothing is clear. Life after death is about those of us who remain. His ashes arrived by Federal Express. My niece signs for this dehydrated version of my husband. His ashes are released on his sculptures. Friends schedule timeshares in my new grief. Different people stay with me for almost a month until it begins to feel that I'm running a B&B. The emptiness is enormous. Some people I'd previously seen on a regular basis become background, as what I'd need now is radically redefined. Interesting is no longer a criteria. Compassionate and caring is where it's at. An uptown synagogue announces a bereavement workshop. Even though I never go to synagogue, I'm willing and desperate to try anything. Only the rabbi and I show up. He presents me with many statements from the Torah, which we read and discuss. We even review the 10 Commandments. The only ones I have not broken are, I have not killed, nor have I coveted my neighbor's wife. Eventually, I make certain changes. Brad hated what he calls stuffed furniture, which I call comfortable. I buy a stuffed chair for the bedroom. There are some expressions, well, just don't say them around me. It's to die for. I don't think so. If anything is that good, isn't it to live for? And why should anyone make the most of a bad situation? Making the least of a bad situation seems much more preferable to me. Some friendships have a shelf life. We try on old routines like last year's carnival costumes. We have to go through it to know everything changes. Some connections lose their vitality. Other connections will miraculously occur because that is how it is between people. I have many friends who lament their imperfections. I strive for imperfection. It would be a major step up from being totally whacked. I need a psychopractor for daily attitude adjustments. Give me an F. Give me an R. Give me an A. U. G. H. T. Fraught. Do I believe in a higher power? You bet I do. Carbs and marijuana. People believe a lot of crazy shit with much less proof. 2 of the best relationships I've had in my life have been with scones. First, a pumpkin cranberry, and then a carrot raisin. Overnight, my sources had just closed overnight. I go into every fucking restaurant, diner, bakery. I try to get into muffins. Size matters for my carb. And I am here to tell you, it is better to have sconed and lost than never to have sconed at all. Still sconed after all these years. Marijuana is the one addiction at which I draw the line. No way am I giving that up. Mind altering? You bet. Good idea. If you had access to my mind on some days, you will go out and buy it for me as an act of mercy. My new practice is called mindlessness. I tried mindfulness, however, with what my mind is full of. You would not wish that for me. I am a thought magician. I connect invisible dots and spin out fantasy conclusions as I descend into obsessive thought loops. If they did a printout of my thoughts, the thought police would arrest me. On a good day, I tread water in the think tank. Helpful hints for things not to do when stoned. Do not initiate texts of any kind whatsoever. Perhaps your device needs a function that automatically waits 12 hours if it smells marijuana on your breath. Do not agree to do or not do or say or promise anything. Do not convince yourself that carrot cake is a vegetable. When I am stoned, I don't get the munchies. I reserve domain names. My most recent is shitgoddamnmotherfucker.com. There's a song in there, somewhere. After Brad died, I moved to Ulster County. In my move up country, I have the good fortune to reconnect with Roswell, someone I had worked with on and off for years. Roswell is a great trombonist. My husband has died, and Roswell's wife has a stroke and has to be moved to a nursing home. We have more in common with each other at this time in our lives than with anyone else we know. We become grieving buddies. Eventually, we start living together. We're both highly domesticated animals. I'm his older woman. He's my older man. We are prime mates. After several years, his wife dies. One night he turns to me and says, "I guess we should get married." "It's working as it is," I say. "Okay," he responds. He never brings it up again. When we started getting together, I thought, wow, an opportunity to do things differently. Really. Had I been so radically changed by Brad's death that I was no longer who I had been, albeit a little less? Roswell and I did our own precious version of the Psycho Loco dance. You put your love all in, you take your love all out. You put your love back in and accept the in and out. We do the Psycho Loco, and finally we no-go. That's what it's all about. Roswell was game. We lived in the middle of the music together. I used to call him Big Ears. We landed many places in the world, and he heard his way into the music. 2014, August. There is a fire on our property. Mice gnaw through wires in the big barn, which rapidly burns to the ground. The paper trail of a lifetime gone, archives, letters, carbon copies, handwriting, gone. Only original copies of music up in smoke. Some email to say, the barn burned down. Now you can see the moon. Really, not seeing the moon was never my problem. The absolute worst part of the experience was dealing with what are called banks and financial institutions. I have a game show idea. Your call is very important to us. Each contestant is given the same 800 number, and whoever gets through to a human first wins. However, we all know that getting through to a human doesn't mean all that much. And eventually it will come to, may I put you on hold? Where do you go? And what do you do when you put me on hold, you fucker? You time sucker? I've been waiting this long for exactly what? I'm starting an agency called Ragers for Hire, where people with unresolved anger issues can represent you in your dealings with these corporate fuckers. If you work, have a family or a life, and cannot devote the kind of time it takes to hold on and on and on, you can hire us. We have the bulldog determination with a nasty pit bull gene to work you up the shit ladder to get to speak to someone with a first and last name. Rageaholics will get it done. Those previously perfected rages of verbal decimation of those nearest and dearest, well, now that unbridled energy can be used for the good. I had my scream, my shriek. My husband used to say to me in his logical way, "You don't have to scream. I'm right here." Of course, he was wrong. I did have to scream. What I didn't know then is I didn't need to scream at him. My mother was also a rageaholic, and hearing her key in the door had turned me into a hyper-vigilante, waiting to see who would enter, loving mommy or batshit crazy mommy. It becomes as easy to upset me as it had been to upset her. I, too, become a blamer, a rager. I was in a new and improved version of bad mommy and become my own mommy dearest. I was born an anxiety addict in utero from my mother to me. Game show idea, blameless. Contestants who never had children tell their stories. The audience then votes for the person who contributed the most by not passing on her emotional DNA. My point of sanity was in not having children, and the children I never had are grateful. For many, the family is a sweet and sour recipe. We are always refining and cultivating our palates, finally to improve the broth. You learn you must make your broth and drink it too, a hearty stock. Everyone will be served their just and unjust desserts, and everyone will dish it out. Some people are known to have drastic, allergic reactions. At the first sign of recognition that you are merely a vulnerable human, find the nearest 12-step program. You will find you qualify for more than one. And gruesome, what a fucking twosome. This is a ranthem. I'm gonna ransom bolder and bolder. We are the olders. Cancer is gruesome and on the loosome.
Awesome meets gruesome. Had biopsy bluesome. Got me in my prostate zone. Moved to the bladder. I'm not alone.
Mortality sightings on the rising. Roswell is diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. Mentally rearranged instantly, free fall emotionally. The man I love and live with has changed. He is now a man living with cancer. We all cohabit. Cancer has moved in. It is never moving out. We both regress. He screams at me. He fucking screams at me. There's not room in the house for two screamers. Cancer enters us into a huge and ever-expanding club that no one wants to belong to. Oh, for the day when the C word meant cunt. He lived well for 3.5 of the 4 years that he battled the disease. In the last stages, one indicator of my emotional health, or lack thereof, is if I get into it with telemarketers. One day, it's a rage aria. I slam down the phone on the last motherfucker piece of shit. The phone rings again. He's calling me back. Suck my cock, suck my cock. Roswell's death is the most communal experience I've ever had. There was a steady stream of family, friends, neighbors who come for the last month of his life, which fortunately is at home. Musician friends play for him. At one point, there are 4 women perched on our bed, singing to him. Words begin to fade. Communication does not. Everyone holds his hand and his gaze. Hospice is a miracle of practicality and compassion. Death and dying is what they do. It's what they know. The goal is not to extend life, but to make the end pain-free. Hospice reminds me a little bit of Jehovah's Witnesses. Whenever you turn around, there's another pamphlet. I become the human breath monitor, waking up often during the night to watch his chest moving up and down and listening for the sound of his breath. On December 22nd, 2017, I wake up at 5:30. He is breathing. I wake again at 6:30. He is no longer breathing. The difference between life and death is breath. They say that nothing is forever. That is a lie. Dead is forever. Mortality sightings on the rising. I spent more time with Roswell in the 19 years we were together than I had with Brad in the 34 years of our marriage. Roswell and I had a full immersion life. We lived together, worked together, shopped together. He cooked, we fought, we loved. Death is a life-changing experience. I started seeing a grief counselor. I asked her about her group. I'm not sure they'd get you, she said. Get me? I asked. Well, you do curse a lot, she said. That's true. I do. I acknowledged. However, I'm civilized. I'm socialized. I don't tell anyone, go fuck yourself or fuck you, unless they deserve it. My father used to say that the first 100 years are the hardest. Existential terror. Have a great day. We're all just muddling through. Well, perhaps not all. Only the lucky get to muddle. I have invented a statue of limitations. Everyone gets one at birth, you wind it up, and then one day it runs out. And a good thing that no one wants to go to the grave still right and angry. It's all about digressing now. I was talking to a friend who was going on, and I realized I had no idea what she was talking about. I kept hoping she'd say something that would give me a clue and bring me back on board. It wasn't happening. I finally said, "What the fuck are you talking about?" People tell me that my segues have become confidential. I could always keep a secret, but now I keep it from myself. I read, you can know you're in deep shit when you leave your car keys in the freezer. What about the sponge in the refrigerator? Does that count? So now, when I can't find something, I start with the freezer so I can relax. I have learned that just because I don't remember something doesn't mean it didn't happen. And just because I remember doesn't mean it did. As with old childhood photographs, when we were told the same story about who it was, where it was, what was happening, until we remember it ourselves. We are all just folk full of lore. The story keeps changing in the telling of it through the personality of the storyteller, at what latches onto as significant in the understanding of it, in the living of it. It's a canvas being painted over constantly to keep it current. The gallery of the photos of the long dead and unknown relatives. Any photo will do, a fantasy to rest on, knowing that someone with that face had a name and had stories. Does anyone, anywhere, still know their names? I've learned I'm not as nice nor as bad as I thought. Everyone reaches their potential. My compassion for some people is in direct proportion to my distance from them. The greater the distance, the greater my compassion. I now know what I don't know, which means I know so much more than I ever did when I thought I knew so much. I no longer try to predict anything. Something will happen. That I know. Musical chairs is really where it's at. I don't have enough time left to spend it reflecting on how it was. How it is much more compelling and requires all the attention I can give it. Navigating loss and less on the rougher seas of older, the certitude of the great uncertainty is more certain. The future closer to the present than it's ever been. I have found the cure for hypochondria. Live long enough and it all becomes real. Here are some band names for olders. The Dry Vaginas, Los Impotentes, the Post-Sexuals, Game of Groans. Why do I still have a vagina? I asked my gynecologist. I don't know, she said. At this time of life, my vagina feels more or less like a vestigial organ. I prefer to trade it in for something more useful, like a larger bladder. When I was a child, I thought that old age was an affliction. I would see groups of old people sitting in front of their buildings on chairs. They had their own peculiar smell. They looked shriveled. I used to hold my breath when I passed them, not wanting to catch whatever it was they had that made them look that way. One day, perhaps, a very young girl will hold her breath as she passes me. In this older time of life, everything is as it never was. Dinner is earlier, early is earlier, late is earlier. I went from looking good to, wow, you look good for your age. What happened to the burning bush that used to be between my legs? All I know is the bald eagle has landed. The hairs on my legs made off with my libido, and the hairs under my arms have migrated to my chin. My new bra size is 36 long. As my skin separates from my bones, it occurs to me that if I stand on my head, I will suffocate. However, if I could have stood on my head, my whole life would have been different. 60 is the new 60. 77 is the new 77. We are the olders. I'll toke to that. At this very moment, all of us here are the oldest we have ever been. Thank you.